Hey all, it's me again, and yep, I finally reached that moment where it doesn't take me months to upload another video. Last time, I released a little demo for my game called Little Miss Dragon, a game where you play as a Little Miss Dragon and go about your way punching anything that moves. Rabbits, birds, the monarchy, nothing will get in your way. And the night I released the demo, I was a bit worried, and my mind was full of thoughts like, what if the game didn't meet up to expectations? What if the whole concept was just flawed from the get-go? What if I just wasted my time and I was better off making something else? But when I woke up the next morning, I couldn't be happier to be proven wrong. A lot of people downloaded and played the game. There's even a person or two that played the game for their YouTube channel. And I also got a lot of feedback. And I mean a lot of feedback. And to some developers, this would be a bit demoralizing seeing that there's a lot of issues with the game. But I'm a glass half full type of guy, and I think this shows that people really want this game to succeed and want to make that happen by giving me advice. And like I said, I got a lot of it. In fact, my initial plan was to stop working on this game for a bit to do other stuff while waiting for more feedback to come through. And I did just that. For about a day until I realized I couldn't take it anymore and I really wanted to start working on the game again. In the demo on my itch page, I left a Google form. And in that form, I left 5 different categories for people to fill out. What they thought of level design, what they thought of art, what they thought of combat, what they thought of the difficulty, what major game-breaking bugs there were, and any suggestions and nitpicks they might have. Let's start out with level design. And from what can be seen here, most people really like the level design, which is great because I thought that was going to be the category that I did least well in. Of course, nothing is perfect, and my levels are no exception, so I started going through feedback. Some people had no idea what the valve and bubbles do, so I made it extra obvious by adding text at the first valve that tells you exactly what to do with it, and I added a symbol on the bubble that lets you know that you can bounce on it. Speaking of bubbles, apparently bubble bouncing was the hardest part of the level, since some people wouldn't even bounce up even though they were definitely hitting the bubble. To fix this, I just simply increased the bubble's collision box a bit more. And if that still doesn't feel right to people even after that, I'll try to make it even more lenient. Another thing people wanted was more split paths for exploration. So I started working on that, and now there are like 3 new sections that you can discover for some hidden rewards. And lastly, for level design, there was this little bug that you couldn't go underneath a moving platform, even though it looks like you clearly should. And I thought this would be an easy fix. But surprise surprise, it wasn't, and it took longer than all the other level design fixes combined. But it's done now, and I hope I never have to deal with collisions again. But that's level design done with. Now let's move on to art. From the results on the forum, it seems like art was the best aspect of the game. I mean, that's probably a no-brainer. Art is what I excel at, and it's what makes this game stand out. But as good as my art is, it ain't perfect, and it could use some fixing up. And it's not like the feedback was saying the art wasn't good. They just wanted more things in the environment, like clouds and stuff, and basically things that would make the level feel more alive. So I did just that, and now there are clouds in the background, clouds overhead, there are now falling leaves, and most importantly, I added birds that fly away when you get too close. Next, people were asking for some fog to cover up the bottomless void that is underneath the map. So after following a Dragon Knight Spam tutorial on how to make fog, I now have some fog underneath the map to cover up the void. And I think it's looking pretty nice. And that's the art changes done with. So now let's move on to combat. The feedback on combat was more all over the place than level design and art. Some people liked it, and some people didn't. A piece of feedback I got was that throwing the stars did too little damage and did not go far enough. That's an easy fix, so I got that done first. And the main form of feedback I got was the fact that the heavy attack was just way too overpowered. It comes out too quickly, making it a much better attack than the light attack. And at first my change was to make it so that there was a lot more end lag after using the heavy attack, but that felt way too punishing and made me never want to use that move. I could just tweak some values until I get the feeling just right, but I came up with a better idea in my opinion. Instead of tapping the heavy attack input, you'd have to charge up your light attack, with its damage, knockback, range, and end lag increasing the more you hold it down. And I think this is a much better idea since it gets rid of the previous problem, it frees up another button for me to use, and if you want to do any meaningful damage, you now have to commit to the attack. As for the input combo attacks, the common consensus was that they were too confusing to pull off, and most players use them by complete accident. I don't blame them, even I have a hard time executing these combos consistently. And so, I was back to square one once again. needing to find a good combo mechanic for the game. No, we're not doing that again. I'm not going to overcomplicate this. I came up with my own system where the attack you use doesn't depend on button input, but instead on other things like whether or not you're airborne or holding down a certain button, and whether or not you're running. So now in game, fully holding down a heavy attack will let you do this super spin that does crazy damage. And if you charge and release the light attack in the air, you'll now perform the sky uppercut. And lastly, there's a new button, the special ability button. This is essentially the attack you'll get from a boss, and for now it's this energy blast. And if you look on the top left, there's this yellow bar that goes down when you use this special ability. This is your magic points, and you cannot use your special abilities without it. And so if you want to make it go back up, I added these blue potions that will refill your energy. And to make sure the player has an idea on how to activate all their abilities, I made it so that if you press select, you'll get this info page that lets you see how each ability is activated. And while I was at it, I added some info about the stage and or boss you're currently fighting, so that down the line I could add some cool lore in these info pages. I said in the previous devlog that all these abilities you get will not be naturally gotten within the tutorial level. And so, to give the player the option on whether or not they want these abilities, I added this item. And if you talk to it, it'll give you a prompt asking you whether or not you want to play with these other abilities, or play with the basic abilities you get at the beginning. I recommend playing with the basic abilities since that's the way the game is meant to be played, but if you want to try these new abilities you'll get later on, that's fine by me too. Now let's move on to other things like difficulty. The majority of feedback for difficulty seems to be that it was pretty balanced, with a few people thinking that it's too easy, or that it's too hard. This isn't surprising. Difficulty isn't something any game will get perfectly. You can't account for everybody's skills. Difficulty seems to be with platforming for the most part. You'd think it would be against the fight against Melanie, but nah, that fight seems perfect, just like her. No, the problem seems to be that falling in a pit would cost you an entire life, which led to a suggestion that said that maybe there shouldn't be any lives in the first place. And I contemplated this, and I even left it up to you guys to decide whether or not I should keep lives. And it seems that the majority felt like there should be lives. But you see, that poll was a ruse, since I decided to ignore that poll and have both unlimited lives and limited lives in the game, through the use of different difficulty settings. A normal mode that gives you unlimited lives and infinite do-overs, and a hard mode, which is basically the original version that gives you limited lives. Next up, I needed a way to get more lives, so I made a sprite for it. Most lives are just a protagonist's face, so I did that for mine, and I placed a few around the level as a reward. It was also stated that the enemy encounters were too easy, and that more should be added. However, this is just a tutorial level, and more complex enemies will be added down the line. But I did add a new enemy for now, and that's a new in massive quotation since this is the sword enemy, an enemy I added in the second devlog. The swordsman is similar to the tough bunny, except you can't stun them with your attacks, so you gotta be careful on whether or not you should dodge your incoming attack. Now is the major section, all the bugs. This is the part I was most nervous about getting feedback on since bugs can be unpredictable, and I might not even know where to start with how messy my code is. There seemed to be 4 big bugs. First up was a bug that would crash the game if you threw a star into an item box, and it's embarrassing that I let an oversight like this happen to begin with. Next up was the camera. There seemed to be moments where the player could see into a wall if there was one right in front of them, and I decided that the best course of action was to have the camera zoom in closer when this happens. And that turned out well. Honestly, these fixes are easy. I don't even know what I was worried about. Yeah, so a big problem I got feedback on was that the player could clip into terrain a bit. And you might think this should be an easy fix, right? I spent more time on this than I did making the new difficulty settings, fixing all the other bugs, and the moving platforms error combined. The collisions were super inconsistent. There would be times that I wouldn't clip into a wall, and then 20 seconds later, I can run into that same wall again and start clipping into it, even when nothing has changed. And I was losing it. And then I realized something. This was never an issue when I first started developing the game. And luckily for me, I had an older version of the game saved on my computer. So I took the collision code from that version and slapped it onto this one. And it worked. This was a lot of time wasted, but now we can finally move past collisions and never speak of this again. And I have one more bug that needs fixing. I'll let this one speak for itself. Yep, the checkpoint glitch is no more. Rejoice, for now you are free to die without being soft locked. Now I could have ended it there, but I wasn't done just yet. In the last devlog, I talked about not wanting to work on sound effects because it was a long and boring process. Turns out, it only took 30 minutes. I guess I over-exaggerated there. But yeah, now there are more sound effects in the game. And while I was at it, I also picked up the character portraits, since I wasn't too fond of them earlier, and I felt they could use some sprucing up. And other than that, that's everything I added into the game. And now there should be a new and improved demo up on my itch page right now. Please let me know what you all think. And as always, have a great day. Bye.